We all have a lot of data, and it has to positively, absolutely stay safe. It can't get into the wrong hands, and the biggest challenge we have is how to transfer it from here to there. We all know as leaders that legacy tools that transfer our important files and sensitive data are mostly outdated and fall short on security, especially with the demands of today's remote workforce. Relying on outdated technology puts our organization's brand at risk, and that is unacceptable. So we're excited to invite you to step into the future of completely secured managed file transfer from our friends at Kiteworks. Kiteworks is absolutely, positively the most secure managed file platform on the market today. They've been FedRAMP moderate authorized by the Department of Defense since 2017. And unlike traditional legacy systems with limited functionality, Kiteworks has unmatched software security with ongoing bounty programs and regular pen testing to minimize vulnerabilities. And the coolest part, they have easy to use one-click appliance updates you will love. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks. Visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. And now, the show. Come join us as we dive deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today. Interviewing top technology leaders from around the world and sharing true cybercrime stories to raise awareness. From the creators of Vigilance, the newest global technology newsletter, translating cyber news into business language we all understand. So please help us keep this going by subscribing for free to our YouTube channel and downloading our podcast episodes on Apple and Spotify so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. Well, welcome everybody to Cybercrime Junkies. I am your host, David Morrow, and today we are joined by Lynn Dohm, Executive Director for WiCyS, Women in Cybersecurity. And I am joined as well by my always positive, always enthusiastic co-host, Mark Mosher. Mark, how are you?
Wonderful, David. Hey, really excited to be in the studio today. This is going to be a great episode. Encourage everyone to look in the show notes, follow Lynn, support the cause, and listen to what we're about to talk about next.
Yep, absolutely. So WiCyS is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the recruitment, retention, and advancement of women in the cybersecurity field. And we'll get into your past history prior, but you've had a stellar history helping out, and you were also a contributor to the book, The Privacy Leader Compass. And we're interested in hearing about that as well. Welcome, Lynn, to the studio.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure.
Well, we're excited about it. So before we went live, we were just talking about the recent RSA and changes that have happened in San Francisco and how the event was just a whirlwind for everybody, right?
It sure was, yes.
Yeah.
A typical RSA fashion, just, back-to-back meetings and, consolidating all your time to make the most out of syncing up with the individuals that you're interested in syncing up with and attending the sessions that you want to attend. And, of course, all the different social activities as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It was quite an experience.
So, well, and I understand you all put on an event, an after-hours event, didn't you? And had a decent turnout.
Yeah, we really did. The Tuesday of RSA, we always rent out the district, and we had a great event. 350 people registered and came through the door, and it started at 6:30, and we closed down the restaurant at around 10:30, 11 o'clock. And
wow, that is a good showing too. 350 is a strong showing.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And what's great about the event at RSA is, you both know that we're not a women's only organization. We're a community that's concerned about the critical workforce shortage. So our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity, but we're not doing this alone. We're a community of men, women, non-binary, individual allies, and advocates that are all concerned about the workforce shortage. And so we create this ecosystem of individuals that are supporting our mission as one piece of of creating more accessibility and opportunities for women to get into the workforce. And so the WiCyS at RSA meetup is always like this big, wonderful activity.
Inclusive event. Yeah.
That's where everyone just kind of comes together in this shared place of understanding of, hey, let's all network, connect, and make these really thriving connections on how we're going to move and change the workforce moving forward. So it's a great social event and, a great success.
That's fantastic. And you serve for WiCyS, which is the Women in Cybersecurity, WiCyS, for those that may not know. And you've been the executive director for 5 years or so now, I think, right? Or longer?
No, yeah. It'll be 5 years in October.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then prior to that, you had helped the Community College Cyber Summit. You had helped form that?
Yeah, well, I was part of the original team that helped launch the Community College Cyber Summit as we were bridging the gap, community college educators to all get together, learn and grow in this space, and help, support that structure. Community colleges are very unique in that they have the very regional workforce way to be kind of more nimble and flexible for the regional needs.
Well, and some brilliant talent can come out of there and has come out of there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
So that was great. And the Community College Cyber Summit started around the same time as WiCyS. And so with that, I was working on many different activities with many different for-profits, non-profits, government grants. And the Community College Cyber Summit was a group that kind of came together from many different NSF-funded grants that were cyber-specific. And then they launched that activity. And around that same time, around 2015, I started working in a support capacity for the WiCyS organization. But it wasn't until 2018 that I actually attended my first WiCyS conference. And then my career really advanced significantly after I formed that community and that camaraderie, what I got out of the WiCyS conference. And then the following year, our founder, Dr. Amberine Siraj, who was at Tennessee Tech University at the time, she asked me if I would consider applying for the position. And what else in life can you merge your passion in your career? I've been working.
Right. That doesn't happen very often.
Right. Exactly. And when someone believes in you before you even really realize how you could believe in yourself, you realize what an incredible amount of opportunity that lies ahead for you to really help drive that change that's needed for so many. So it's been a whirlwind of 4.5 years. I can't believe it's coming up on 5 years, but we've been making a lot of progress and impacting a lot of lives.
Well, yeah, and each year you guys put out the executive summary, kind of the state of inclusion of women in cybersecurity. At least I know that you put one out in 2023 toward the end of last year. And I'd like to just can you share with us some of the findings so that because people hear. There's a million jobs open in cybersecurity, yet there's so many people struggling to break in, and none of that stuff adds up. So, the struggle that women have for equality in the workplace transcends far beyond security for sure, but it is something that is very prevalent in a clearly male-dominated field like cybersecurity.
Yes, and so. We know that there's always been a lot of studies and research on what is the percentage of women in the cyber workforce. And we've leaned in on ISC2 studies that women represent roughly 20 to 24% of the workforce. Now, when we started in 2014, we were at 11%. So the needle has
so it's doubled.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's doubled. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, that was, through the effort of everyone involved, not just the WiCyS organization. Many nonprofits are working out there to drive to increase that percentage of women in the workforce. So we're really happy with that. But for us, we know that the lack of diversity is a symptom of the lack of inclusion. And since our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity, we wanted to peel back the layers and say, what is the state of women? We know we could recruit all we want, but can we retain, and what does advancement truly look like for women in the cybersecurity workforce? So we started exploring this question in 2022, and in 2023 we piloted a study and we put out an executive summary, and we had some really interesting findings. But at the end of 2023 we did a benchmark report. So we had over 1,000 participants come in, and what we did is we quantified the experiences of exclusion to identify the state of inclusion for women in cybersecurity.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Like, how do you measure that, right? Like, how do you measure whether an organization is inclusive enough, right? And I mean, at what point do you just kind of get rid of all the white males and just have everybody of mixed race or color be in leadership roles? But at some point, it's kind of like there has to be a measurement, right? There has to be fairness. There has to be, the right person with the right skills in the right job, regardless of orientation, gender, etc. Right? So you guys went through and you had like a whole set of metrics, as I recall.
Yeah. We partnered with Optery, and they were able to do an assessment, and it was an hour-long assessment where people shared their experiences of exclusion. We had 35% men participate, 5% women.
It's great.
So we, they produced the aggregate average, and it was enabled us to have this conversation of what is the state of inclusion, because now we have data. Diversity is really easy data to get,
right?
And it's very easy. It's like low-hanging fruit.
Right.
You could take that metric and do something with it and, put in some early career initiatives. And if it grows so slightly, everyone could be happy. But inclusion is not often talked about because it's a feeling and it's only felt when you're excluded. So we kind of struggled with how are we going to bring awareness to leaders about inclusion when we know that the higher that leaders rise, lessens their experiences of exclusion. So they're not even experiencing it themselves. So that's why we partnered, came up with the data. And there were some interesting findings. I mean, first of all, we weren't surprised that women experienced exclusion 2 times higher than men do. That was we expected that.
Because I think that transcends cybersecurity as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's no surprise.
Yeah. But I saw you were measuring like feelings of respect, career and growth. And I thought that was really good, trying to quantify kind of respect and things. I mean, I saw those metrics and I'm like, those could be metrics for any company, for any culture, right? Really. Like it would be a great mechanism to evaluate an organization's culture.
And that's the point, is that culture is really the key here. And so what was interesting is that the second area of sources of exclusion for women in cybersecurity stem from career growth and advancement. Now, Optery, that does these inclusion assessments across all sorts of industries, they haven't seen that for any other industry besides.
So what does that mean? It means in general, females are able to start in the field but not move up?
It does. And it also came up with the report aligns with women experience a glass ceiling at around 6 to 10 years within their career. So now we have actual areas where we could pinpoint some pain points. So now we could have a conversation with, if we're bridging those gaps, what are employers' responsibility to that? And what is WiCyS's responsibility as a nonprofit?
Right.
And so now we're very intentional on, okay, we have that 6 to 10 years. So an employer that's listening to this will be like, oh, all right, I see that there's individuals on my team. They're at around 5-year mark. If they're underrepresented, we might want to start paying attention to what their career growth and advancement opportunities are. And
those can be micro steps too. Those could be some of that could be asking them, sitting down with them. Like, what is it that you want to do? What is it that the opportunities that, because a business only has the ability to promote based on what opportunities exist, right? But if you, because sometimes I'm still convinced that so much of this boils down to just terrible, right? Like we're just terrible at it. Humans are, we're just horrible at it, and men in particular. And if we can just listen and ask the questions open-ended and hear what people really want, we might be surprised in what we hear. And it oftentimes will be directly aligned to what's in the best interest of the organization.
That's it. You hit the nail on the head, David.
Well, I've been head of WiCyS now for 4 minutes and I've made an impact. So no, I really found the findings, I wasn't surprised by them. I mean, I guess I'm not surprised. I mean, cybersecurity is a broad term and there's a lot of different facets, but there's, technology in general is predominantly a male field in my experience so far, but you still see certain segments. And whenever there's a brilliant, hardworking female, I've always seen them rise up and rise. And so, but it's always those subtle things like the glass ceiling and other things that make it very complicated.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, did you ever want to ask us a question directly or communicate, give us feedback, make suggestions, whatever it is, you can now do that direct. There's a link in the show notes right at the top where you can text us directly, come communicate with us right here in the podcast studio, or you can text the number 904-867-4466 and text the number 201-4652 and leave your message. That is 904-867-4466 or text the number 204-4652 and leave your message. We look forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah. And, and it's also hard to be what you cannot see. And so when you're in an organization, if you're not seeing and witnessing women in leadership, it's also very challenging because you're not seeing a way up for yourself. So that you would layer some, other areas into that. And it could be just, eventually you get bored in a position, or you're not getting the stretch assignments, or you're getting assumed that you're accepting the status quo of where you're at, and you're seeing some colleagues getting promoted, and all those things add up. It's not just women, it's underrepresented individuals. But for us, we did a study based on women in cybersecurity, and there's a lot of other data that we could parse out, and we eventually will get to it. But we definitely wanted to roll out that benchmark report to continue this conversation, aligned with the priorities of our mission.
And I noticed that toward the end of the last executive summary, there was a finding organizations that were WiCyS, right, had a significantly lower exclusion rate than those that weren't. What significance did that have for you? What does that mean?
Yeah. And, we weren't even looking for that. That did.
No, it just came out, right?
Yeah. And we were so interested in that. Our researcher actually called a meeting like you would not believe what we've discovered here. And so part of the assessment included asking if they were participating as an employee of part of a particular organization. And we looked at if they were strategic partners of ours. We have close to 65, or maybe we're even at 65 right now, strategic partners that fund us year round. And what we came up with in the state of inclusion assessment is that if participants were employees of WiCyS strategic partners, they had 49% less experiences of exclusion and 54% higher levels of satisfaction.
Wow.
And so we were thinking, is it because they're a strategic partner, so they're oddly a little more inclusive? That's why they're partnering with a nonprofit organization like WiCyS, and they really have that culture infused in what they are? Or is it because of their partnership with WiCyS that they created a more inclusive state because they have more awareness? And so Illyria looked at that data even further, and what they realized is those individuals that participated in the assessment, identified as employees of WiCyS strategic partners, they had a very broad understanding of WiCyS, and they were actively a part of the community. And they either participated in webinars, they hosted webinars, they, did presentations at the WiCyS conference. They were a mentor, they were a mentee, they were building programming efforts. They were part of a cybersecurity team that was building out custom programming for WiCyS. Like they weren't siloed. They were part of something outside of just themselves. They were making a bigger impact in some bigger way with a broader community. And so it boils down to us realizing the community effort works. Working in silos and not often having many other women on your team is very challenging. And when you bring individuals all together, you are creating an automatically more inclusive, more belonging state. And so when your employer respects that and you have that supported within your job role, then you're going to feel that. And it's all about feeling and having that kind of mission focused. So
Yeah.
it was really great data for us to find. I mean, we weren't looking for it and it came up and it was
Right.
a big difference there.
Yeah. I mean, it was in when I saw some of the examples, like when some of the people that had participated, they had some really odd stories of being excluded, right? And some things that were just, not very sensitive, or you can tell the people that had offended them, like, clearly hadn't read the room. They weren't really paying attention. But little things too, like when decisions were being made, they were made by groups of guys over lunch when the women weren't there. And it's like, how easy is that to fix? Like, just don't make the decisions until everybody's in the room, or invite them to lunch. Like, some of this stuff it can be solved with just better collaboration, I think.
Paying attention.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, at the WiCyS conference.
Yeah, Mark and I are like the poster child of guys that haven't in the past. So that's why we're open to this. Like, we want to learn. That
was like day 2 of my therapy. We went over that. Yeah.
Yes. We're like, this is things we have to learn to listen. So yeah, this is really good.
Yeah, there's lots of stories that we hear all the time, and people, when they look at an inclusion assessment, these are not old stories; these are very new stories. And when we have editors and reporters that are reporting on this data, I've received so many DMs and private messages of individuals saying it was a pleasure to report on this, because in these modern times, the fact that these different scenarios are still playing out, we have to bring more awareness of.
Yeah, because some of them were pretty egregious. Like, when I was reading through it, I'm like, some people were like doing things that were completely inappropriate by 1950s standards. And the fact that it was going on in 2023, I'm like, wow, that's not good. So, and as guys, Mark and I don't see that, right? Like, we don't see that. People don't do that in front of us and stuff. So, actually hearing about it is really good, because that makes us more aware.
Yeah.
What about with the use of AI? And maybe this is a different kind of question. And I asked this because I read an article. You always
have to weave AI into everything.
I know. But I thought it was really unique, right? It was an article that it was written from human resource perspective. That AI is now being used for initial interviews. Like, AI is conducting the interview and will lead the conversation and measure them, not just based on their skill set when it comes to like cyber. Do you have this cert? Do you know how to, subset IP address, things like that. But they have to look into the camera the whole time. It reads like their facial movements, the changes in their pupil, and all this stuff. And then it gives the recommendation on whether or not they should be hired. And they said, on the one hand, what if AI gets it wrong and doesn't read the person right? But 2, does this eliminate like all social biases that individuals may have themselves when an individual that they may not like that particular person or whatever country that they're from,
because of their own personal bias.
Yeah. So it was really unique. That. And I just wonder if maybe that creates greater opportunities for equality for everybody if we start leveraging something like that. I don't know. I just thought it was a unique take.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We all have a lot of data, and it has to positively, absolutely stay safe. It can't get into the wrong hands. And the biggest challenge we have is how to transfer it from here to there. We all know as leaders that legacy tools that transfer our important files and sensitive data are mostly outdated and fall short on security, especially with the demands of today's remote workforce. Relying on outdated technology puts our organization's brand at risk, and that is unacceptable. So we're excited to invite you to step into the future of completely secured managed file transfer from our friends at Kiteworks. Kiteworks is absolutely, positively the most secure managed file platform on the market today. They've been FedRAMP moderate authorized by the Department of Defense since 2017. And unlike traditional legacy systems with limited functionality, Kiteworks has unmatched software security with ongoing bounty programs and regular pen testing to minimize vulnerabilities. And the coolest part, they have easy to use one-click appliance updates you will love. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks. Visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. And now, the show.
That is a really interesting article. I'd love to read more about it. And you're absolutely right. Maybe it's eliminating those biases that we all have unconscious bias. It's about paying attention, understanding what could potentially be harmful with that unconscious bias that we are not even aware of at the time until you're really looking into it further. And perhaps that is the solution, is the AI interviewing bias, but there's still so much unknown with that.
Yeah, it's all about the programming of the AI program, right? Because how much bias is inputted into the program in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Like I would hear the southern drawl of Mosher and Nixon.
Well, see, I couldn't pull one over on the AI, right? Like I couldn't con them into giving me a job. That'd be total loss there.
One of my favorite stories is when I was at a summit in Cleveland. I was sitting at a table with CISOs, and one of the CISOs was really excited to share with me that he has 35% women on his team, and he's not going to stop until he was at 50%. Now, this is like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was really interested because it was right around the time that, ISC2 started saying that we're at 20 to 24%, depending on what, studied with many different researchers. And so I asked him what he was doing different, and he very thoughtfully was considering it, like thinking, what is he like? He's like, what am I doing different?
Yeah.
And he realized a few years ago that he started paying attention, and he realized that if women weren't applying for his positions, something was wrong. And instead of just accepting that women just aren't applying to these positions, he really started being intentional with looking at the postings himself and working with talent acquisition, and removing like the outrageous wish list that David and Mark, you all are aware of. Like there's more, job recs out there that have a CISSP requirement than there are CISSP.
Right. Yeah. And it's like entry-level job, just CISSP, 5 years of managing a SOC. You're like, that is not an entry-level job.
Yes, exactly. And so those were all the things. And then he also was very intentional knowing of the different tools and the policies, procedures, and other the things that his team was going to train the individual on too.
Oh, that's great.
So reducing that massive wish list. Everyone has a wish list. Everyone's looking for the unicorn. It's a big thing in cybersecurity, always looking for that unicorn. And then putting it through gender neutral tools, having the other women in cybersecurity professionals that are on his team looking at the job rec, and then submitting it from there and really paying attention to the interviewing process. And lo and behold, he was able to increase the amount of women on his team and have that powerful diversity of thought that women also bring and are able to leverage to those cybersecurity teams. And so it is about paying attention. It is being very intentional, and it's looking at if something isn't attracting women to apply for, then something's not working there. So what are you going to do? Meeting the community where the community is really another area of focus for us too.
Absolutely. So how did you, we always ask about the origin story. How did you get into the Cyber Watch Center, the Cyber Fed, being interested in cybersecurity in general? Were you interested, curious in technology when you were younger? Like what was it that spurred you into the field in general?
So I started working with an NSF funded grant on cybersecurity, different skill-based trainings and programming efforts, and kind of overcoming the cybersecurity education. And with that, I started working and getting contracted with many other different NSF type of funding type grants. And I was working more like in the communications area of reiterating and explaining to others what exactly cybersecurity is all about and the many different, career pathways and way to get into it. But I was often struck quickly when I started working on these is why is there this workforce shortage? It was fascinating to me because the minute I started working in cybersecurity, it was fascinating to me. It was fast-paced. It was ever-changing. It was problem-solving. It brought a lot of curiosity. There was so much that it has to offer: a lucrative career advancement, financial
it's a bigger
freedom,
cause, too. It's not just technology for digital purposes. It's technology to protect organizations, right? So there's like it's mission-focused.
And so it was...
and for the listeners, NSF does not mean into funds, which is great. I'm sure
Oh,
Mark
okay. That one
thought
totally
it's
went
the
over my head
National
then.
Science Foundation.
I was like, she gets those too? Man,
No,
glad it's not
I
just
want to
me.
clear that up.
Glad it's not just me.
I never even thought of that. Thank you for clarifying that.
That's because you pay your bills on time. That's okay.
Me, not so much.
So I started working on, I really just started honing in on security workforce initiatives. And that's what led me on my journey of how could we make this a more inclusive, strong, gender diverse workforce. And
so let me ask you this. Is there a general shortage in cybersecurity talent, male and female in general in the United States? Because we always hear that there is. But then tech industries lay people off and people are out searching for work. So I'm just curious what the reality is. Like, what are you seeing?
We're seeing that there is a lot of unfilled jobs out there.
Mm-hmm.
We're also seeing, of course, that tech industries are laying individuals off. And so it's challenging, according to the most recent data, that there's about 3.9 million unfilled jobs in cybersecurity globally. I don't know.
I mean, isn't that amazing? Doesn't that just amaze you? Like, how is that possible? These are organizations that want to hire cybersecurity talent and can't fill the roles.
It's that 3 to 5 years experience, David.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. And as a nonprofit, we're actually meeting, we have all our strategic partners that are this ecosystem that are investing in the cybersecurity workforce initiatives. And we're meeting with them to talk about, like, how could we overcome this challenge? What could us as a nonprofit, what would it take for us? We build out internship programs. We build out apprenticeship programs. It's just, we need to do more and we need to utilize ourselves, knowing that we're this great bridge between the employers and the community as a catalyst to see this collective space. Like, let's create this think tank and how can we give those individuals the 3 to 5, or else it's just going to be perpetuating the problem.
Right.
If we
Absolutely.
don't get these individuals 3 to 5 years of experience, get them in the door, get the jobs filled, then, when WiCyS started in 2000, women represented 11% of the cybersecurity workforce, but there was 1 million unfilled jobs. Now we represent 20 to 24% of the cybersecurity workforce, but there's close to 4 million unfilled jobs.
Right.
So the demand is just more, and we have to continue to work. So there's a lot more work that we have to do. We've done a lot. We've built an incredible community. We have a lot of incredible initiatives, programming efforts. We have 1,600 enrolled in our mentor-mentee program. All our programs far exceed our expectations. Like when we opened up our registrations for all our programming efforts, it takes a tremendous amount of staffing to kind of go through and make that selection process on who's moving in or coming into the program, who's moving through it, and then how else can we support our community. And so there's a lot more work that we need to be doing in that space, and building out the programming efforts and looking at what is that 3 to 5 years experience and why are we still here? Why are we still having those conversations? Is it a big conversation we're still having?
Yeah. Well, we thank you guys for all that you're doing. Let me ask you about this. The book, The Privacy Leader Compass. Share with us about the experience of helping that, and what's the mission of the book, the message of the book?
The message of the book is, just a privacy leader, all the different experiences and how many different individuals in this space are overcoming the challenges and identifying some of the barriers and what they're working on moving forward. And so it was a great pleasure to be for Valerie and Todd to reach out to me and ask me to be a contributor. And so I was able to share just a little bit of our experience on the purpose of the mentor-mentee program. And, for the sake of the listeners, when WiCyS built out our mentor-mentee program, we looked at our programming efforts that weren't working. We thought we're going to match mentors with mentees, and they were going to develop a relationship, and people are going to advance in their careers because of it. And what we realized is that there's a lot more involved in the relationship building and really identifying the pain points for individuals for overcoming career advancement challenges. And so we started doing some research, and we realized that individuals that have a mentor are 5 times more likely to have a promotion. But what was really interesting to us is that individuals that are mentors are 6 times more likely.
Really?
Yes. And
That's
so we kind of flipped
interesting.
the script.
Yeah, yeah.
Looked at the narrative of what we need is more mentors. Mentoring is a leadership skill set. It takes a tremendous amount of knowledge and effort to navigate through those really crucial conversations. And so we built out a curriculum designed to mentor the mentor. So then we could set them up in a mentoring cohort group. So now they have a community, and then everyone could go into this shared place of understanding to learn and grow together. And that mentor can facilitate that conversation. And that's been working out extremely, well for our mentors, for our mentees. We have so many male allies that are in the mentoring program, and they even share with us a year later that they would never be able to be a part of some of the more difficult and uncomfortable conversations that they're a part of now if they themselves didn't go through the programming effort. So there's, it was an opportunity for us to build up this need that we still so strongly have for mentors.
No, that's great. That's really good.
Well, the importance of mentorship, I mean, I think those findings are fantastic because it not only bolsters the career of the mentors, of the mentees, which one would think, right? That's kind of logical, but of the mentors themselves and building that cohort and that community around the mentors, because nobody really teaches you how to be a mentor, right?
Right. We just assume it.
Right.
We assumed if someone signed up to be a mentor, they know how to mentor.
Right.
Until you're in the mentoring sphere yourself and you're like, oh gosh, how am I going to start this conversation? So
you see that across all lines at Origin. Somebody does really well on a job, they promote them, and then all of a sudden they're in charge of a team. And it's like, wait, they were good at the job. They're not necessarily good at coaching others to be good at the job. Right. You need to train them, right? And so that's one of the main challenges that we see across all sectors.
Yeah, it is. And that was, by identifying that challenge and looking at what's worked, what hasn't worked, what have been successful programming efforts, we were able to build out the set of resources to kind of overcome that uncomfortable state of growth within your professional development. So
that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, we'll have a link to the book, The Privacy Leader Compass, and we'll also have a link to the executive summary. And a link to your contact info as well as WiCyS. That's fantastic. So you just came back from RSA. What's on the horizon for you guys next? I'm sure you have some things set up or planned, or are you just still unpacking from RSA?
Decompressing from RSA.
Let's figure out what we're going to do next.
We have a lot.
I was just curious.
We have a lot going on. We have our Target Cyber Defense Challenge that opened up. The registration opened up for that today. So that's very exciting. And that came from Target's cybersecurity team just being interested in a programming effort for the WiCyS organization. So they develop it.
That's great.
They develop the whole program, the scenario, the whole team comes together. So it's really a creative, it's just a wonderful space for the Target team to be working on together. And then they mentor our WiCyS members through the program, and it's tiered.
Oh, yeah. And they have had, historically, they have such a strong cybersecurity stance. Like Target has always done very, very well. And I know there was the big Target breach, and it's always cited in cybersecurity awareness trainings, but let's not forget it wasn't Target. It was the HVAC vendor, right? That kind of brought that. But it's a good lesson to think about vendor risk, right? Because so many organizations really struggle with that.
Right.
Hey, we're still trying to get people to always use MFA, let alone worry about what their vendors are doing, right? So when we think about the maturity level of cybersecurity here in the United States, there's a lot of work to be done.
A lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
So that's another thing we're also working on is the student chapter pilot program. We're piloting a program.
Oh, fantastic.
As we're building up, we have 270 student chapters right now. And so we're building a program.
Are they located in higher ed, in universities, at community colleges, or just independently? How are they structured? Like how would somebody get involved if somebody was a student and want to get involved?
they could just form one. They could reach out to WiCyS, and if they were a high school student, a technical institution, a community college, university, they would be able to go through the applications and to be able to launch their own student chapter. And so as a nonprofit, we're able to fund that student chapter. What we want to do is build all that awareness throughout not only their college or institution, but we want them to also bring security awareness to so many on the campus. And so
that's great.
Student chapter presidents receive a WiCyS conference scholarship. So they come to our own conference so that they can learn and grow and bring that back to their institution or their high school and continue to grow that community. And again, it boils down to it's hard to be what you cannot see. And so we want individuals at the high school, and the college and university level to be able to have that community, create an inclusive space for others to get into cybersecurity. So the student,
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, that
great.
is just fantastic. I mean, that is just when students are, students are struggling financially, right? And whenever they get any little bit of help, you earn a customer or a loyalty fan for life, right? Like when I was in college, I got some assistance through United Way. And now throughout my adult life, I've been helping the United Way. Like, it's just one of those things. I'm like, man, when I had nothing, right, and I was able to get a little bit of help, like, you never forget that. That's a wonderful, wonderful approach. That's great.
Yeah. So that's our pilot program is working on our Cybersecurity Awareness Month toolkit, and then educating on how we're going to mobilize our student chapters to go down to high schools to not only educate on cybersecurity awareness, the basics like the multi-factor authentication. And
I love those toolkits.
That's cool.
I loved your toolkit last year. We did for Cybersecurity Awareness Month last year, Mark. Remember that? We did an episode. We gathered up our past episodes and then new episodes, and we launched an episode a day just to really raise awareness during that month. And it's just, and we gathered up reaches all the toolkits. CISA has a toolkit, like the vendors do, Know4 and Wiser, and they all have the toolkits. But those toolkits are just chock full of great resources to help raise awareness in an organization, right? I think and the WiCyS toolkit was fantastic. So I think that's excellent.
Thank you.
That's great. Yeah.
So we're looking at how are we going to revamp that and then make it better. It was the first year we've done it like that. And so we're looking at how can we make that a little stronger. And then our mentor-mentee program, we're also working on that. And then our biggest security training scholarship program. That's one of our most signature programs. Security training scholarship. And so those applications will be opening up in July. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done right now. And with that also includes going out and bringing the employers together for funding a lot of that work.
Right.
And so that's part of where we're at with our programming efforts.
No, that's fantastic. Well, we wish you guys the very best, and we will have links in the show notes, and we encourage everybody to not only be included, but to listen more. And I'm still convinced the more and more I speak with national leaders like you and global security leaders, like so much of it is subtle, right? So much of it is just, some of these large data breaches occur when somebody's just distracted. And they do, it's the fundamentals, like where they're beating us on the fundamentals. And if we could just take time and just be more aware of our surroundings, we'll not only be more inclusive, but we'll be able to reduce the number of breaches. And that's really where it's got to happen. So, well, thank you so much for your time.
Yes,
we really appreciate all the work that you're doing. You guys are doing great. And any way we can help support you, we absolutely will.
Well, we appreciate you elevating the voices of so many within our WiCyS community just by bringing awareness to the organization through your podcast. So it's a great pleasure to have this conversation with you both. And thanks so much for having me.
No, absolutely. And maybe Mark can, at your barber college, Mark, maybe you can start a
local
student chapter.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
Barbers have to worry about cybersecurity too.
That's
they
exactly
take cash,
right.
They take credit cards, they're PCI compliant.
That's exactly right.
Now I've just alienated all the barbers, so it's okay.
We just lost a whole segment of our
I
listeners.
just lost a whole segment of our listeners. They were 42% of our listeners, by the way. So I'm just teasing. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lynn.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps this up. Thanks for joining, everybody. Hope you got value out of digging deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today. Please don't forget to help keep this going by subscribing free to our YouTube channel at Cybercrime Junkies Podcast, and download and enjoy all of our past episodes on Apple and Spotify podcasts so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for joining us. Hey everyone, we are thrilled to introduce you to a place very close to our heart, blushingintrovert.com, an online store of women's clothing and accessories that make the perfect gift. You see, they're passionate about spreading joy and promoting mental health awareness. Blushingintrovert.com carries cozy women's sweatshirts and quality accessories, journals, handmade gifts and stickers. Everything is in stock, ready to ship directly to your door. Inspired by the calling to give back, a portion of every purchase supports vital mental health initiatives. So your shopping experience with blushingintrovert.com truly makes a difference. So come check them out on either Etsy or at their online store at blushingintrovert.com and experience the warmth. Blushingintrovert.com, your happy place. Visit blushingintrovert.com today.